Only in America.
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 Welcome to Only in America. I'm Ali Nurani. This week, let's go back to the gem state, Idaho, where a career and college prep program is helping middle and high school Latino students pursue a college education.
Two of the kids said they wanted to be astronomers. Again, unless Jerome is incredibly unusual, that would be a pretty high percentage of astronomers. But I think it's the NASA program that they were involved in that summer that actually opened their eyes to even the possibility that they could do that. I don't know that they'll be astronomers, but the fact that they were thinking about being astronomers, I think says that the program is having influence upon them.
And how the University of Idaho is helping Idaho students from farm worker backgrounds not just enroll, but thrive.
I think the University of Idaho does a good job with our research mission especially, and we've tried to do a much better job during my presidency of reaching out, encouraging students of all sorts to come to the university, but also ensuring that we're serving literally all the students of Idaho from an economic stratum perspective, from an ethnicity perspective, all of those kinds of things.
From the National Immigration Forum, I'm Ali Nurani. Part of my job, heck, a major part of my job, involves travel across the country, big cities, small cities, rural towns. The people I meet come from all walks of life and from different parts of the world. My job and this issue of immigration makes for a magical, if not sometimes pretty frustrating, blend of cosmopolitan and small town that reminds me of why America is and always will be great. I recently had the opportunity to visit Moscow, Idaho, population 25,000, and meet students and faculty at the University of Idaho. I started my day with students from the College Assistance Migrant Program, or CAMP. It was a room of about a dozen students, most all who had been born and raised in Idaho. CAMP provides a supplemental scholarship to qualified students who attend the university to help with the cost of tuition, room and board, books and transportation. More than that, CAMP provides a learning and support community for students who are often the first in their family to go to college. I gotta say that starting my day with that group of students was both centering and incredibly inspiring. A few hours later, I spoke to a freshman sociology class. Now, I was expecting a tough room, not interested in any sort of a back and forth, and expecting that people would be skeptical of immigration. And I admit it, I stereotyped a campus where 75% of students are from Idaho. After my scene-setting comments that combined terrible humor with, quote, thought leadership, also known as an Only in America episode, I posed some questions to the class. Why are some Americans worried about immigration? What does it take to engage conservative and moderate voters on this issue? And what does it take to increase their level of comfort with immigration? At other campuses, it usually takes a while for me to get the class talking, for them to see perspectives of conservative and moderate Americans, to start a conversation about engaging voters based on culture and values, not politics and policy. But not this time. The University of Idaho freshmen in this class immediately understood the importance of engaging conservative Americans through a cultural message. They quickly identified faith, law enforcement, and business leaders as the trusted messengers. By the end of what was a lively conversation, they had zeroed in on the overarching challenge facing the immigration debate. What does it mean to be an American? And who gets to define what it means to be an American? At a dinner that night with the dean of the college and a few of his staff, I realized why the class felt different. It was because the students were talking about their parents, the communities that they grew up in, and they knew what it took to convince their parents to think differently about immigrants and immigration. And what it took was being able to feel like their parents' definition of being American was being heard and was being respected.
Support for the National Immigration Forum comes from the James Irvine Foundation, expanding opportunity for the people of California, and from the Carnegie Corporation of New York, established in 1911 by Andrew Carnegie to promote the advancement and diffusion of knowledge and understanding.
As much as the conversation with the class surprised me, it was my time with the university president, Chuck Staben, that really stuck in my mind. On his wall hung a plaque from the Idaho Commission on Hispanic Affairs. It read, Amigo del Año, or Friend of the Year. He received the honor for his work on behalf of the university's LatinX community. Around the time he had received the award, Staben and the Latino Advisory Council were working together to establish the Caminos al Futuro program, or Pathways to the Future. Now, this initiative differs from CAMP, which I had talked about earlier. Instead of assisting University of Idaho students, Caminos al Futuro is focused on providing academic and career readiness support to students as early as the 8th grade. Under a new federal grant, the program will grow to have 40 middle school students and 40 high school students. And it's a program that's actually based in southern Idaho and Jerome, which is very important since a 2016 University of Idaho study showed that Latinos make up around 18% of the state's K-12 school population. Furthermore, Latinos accounted for 42% of enrollment growth in the previous 5 years. If not for the growth among Latinos in southern Idaho, 6 counties and 10 school districts would have shrunk in recent years. On average, this population is younger than non-Hispanics in the state and are more likely to be in the labor force. All to say, it looks like University of Idaho's initiatives such as CAMP and Caminos al Futuro have plenty of work to do to take advantage of the opportunities provided by the state's growing Latinx community. But these opportunities are not just good for a diversifying student body, they're great for the state's economy. I spoke with Chuck earlier this month in Moscow. He grew up in Waukegan, Illinois, where his father worked for U.S. Steel. Before his arrival to the Gem State, Chuck worked at the University of South Dakota, where he is provost, and the University of Kentucky. Besides talking about Caminos and Camp, Chuck and I spoke about what sparked his interest in research and, well, who's better versed in the world of dairy. So, at what point in your life did you say, okay, I want to go into academia? Was there an experience or a moment?
Oh, gosh, I don't know that it was a irrevocable sort of decision, but I had a wonderful experience in freshman chemistry with a person I thought was a superb teacher, who really challenged us, but also was a great teacher, and I thought that would be something interesting. And then I guess my view of what an academic career meant probably changed over time as I understood more about what research was, what expectations of a professor were, et cetera.
How's that?
Well, I think when I grew up, I just really didn't understand what research really was at all. I had never seen that done, and I didn't know that professors at research universities like University of Kentucky, University of Idaho, University of California, Berkeley were expected to both teach and do research. And as I matured at the University of Illinois as a student, I got involved in research. I saw what some of the, in my case, biochemistry professors actually did, et cetera, and just got a little fuller view of that.
As you were going through your career, how did the student body change over time?
At Berkeley in '78, when I started, it was an interesting time from an international viewpoint because mainland Chinese students were just starting to come in, actually, and Chinese scientists were just starting to collaborate with us. That has increased dramatically over my time in the profession. I would say as that's increased, we've actually seen a diminution in American students in those same fields, percentage-wise. And probably greater representation globally, Indian students, et cetera, just generally in those fields. I don't think we've seen a lot of minorities, African Americans, Hispanics, enter those particular fields that I did my graduate work in.
So then, as you moved into leadership and administrative roles, and you saw these changes happening, what are the types of strategies that you thought about to recruit a broader student population?
The challenges are a little different at different institutions.
Right.
If you're at a very selective institution like Stanford and highly resourced, you have certain approaches that you can take. When you're at a low-resourced institution, you're probably more willing to just take students who you think are academically capable. And so we actually, at the University of Kentucky, for example, really tried to focus on recruiting Americans who would stay in the United States and contribute, and kind of filled our classes with Chinese. So frankly, we tried to recruit a diverse American population and then let the chips fall where they may on the rest of it. I'm not trying to justify that was the correct strategy. I'm saying that's what we did.
That's what we did. Fair enough. For us as an organization, we have developed a pretty close partnership with the Idaho Dairymen Association. So, I now know more about the Idaho dairy industry than I ever thought I would.
Oh, come on. You want to lay the cards down, and then I know a lot about dairy too.
No. I'm not looking for any sort of a challenge here. I'm just, trying to give you a sense I've done my homework to some degree. What's it been like at University of Idaho as the state has changed, as the industries around the state? This is such a critical institution for the long-term, success of Idaho.
Well, I think it is a critical institution for the long-term success of Idaho. Idaho has a lot of challenges, faces a lot of challenges, not just in dairy, of course, but we are one of the lowest income states, one of the fairly low resourced in almost every way as a state. We have a low high school graduation rate. We have a low college progression rate. We have a relatively low college graduation rate. We actually conduct a limited amount of research at our research institutions. So we're on that sort of EPSCoR idea state scale. And I think the University of Idaho does a good job with our research mission especially, and we've tried to do a much better job during my presidency of reaching out, encouraging students of all sorts to come to the university, but also ensuring that we're serving literally all the students of Idaho from an economic stratum perspective, from an ethnicity perspective, all of those kinds of things.
So I noticed that you were honored as the El Amigo del Año.
Yes, it's right up there, my little plaque.
So tell me a little about how did that come to be?
Well, I think the way they came, obviously it's the Hispanic Commission that actually makes that selection, but I think the reason they selected me was that shortly after coming to the university, I said, well, gosh, I don't know that we're serving our Latino communities particularly well. And I could see that we actually had a pretty successful Native American Advisory Council, and I didn't see any Latin American Council. So I said, like, we've got to do something about that. So just founded a Latino Advisory Council, and then met with them. We had a nice group of people, sort of a cross-section of that community a little bit, including Bob Narabout from the Idaho Dairymen's Association, and said, well, what are the issues? And one of the primary issues they wanted us to try to address was access to higher education for the Latino community in Idaho. We don't do a terrible job. We're sort of just a little bit sub-representational, I would say, of that ethnic group. But we said, well, what more can we do? And so, for example, we changed some of our transfer student policies, making transfer students more eligible for scholarships. And we work pretty closely with some of our institutions like College of Southern Idaho that serve a little bit more heavily Latino population. And then we were in the process at the time I received the award of instituting a program down in Jerome, Idaho, that's sort of a pathways program to ensure that Latinx students have access to understanding how higher education can benefit them, that their parents are engaged, that they have a lot of support. And we've actually now been able to support that program with a USDA grant and hook that up with 4-H, which is a great infrastructure.
Yeah, this morning, the first meeting I did here was with the CAMP program.
Okay, which we've had for quite a long time, and serves some of the same kinds of folks, although is a distinct program here.
So give me a sense of kind of what the differences are. It was a great group of students.
Well, it is a great group of students, and we've had, I think, a long history of having really good coordinators for that program, including at one time Yolanda Bisbee, who's now our Chief Diversity Officer and Executive Director of Tribal Relations. But that program has served largely Hispanic students from originally mostly a migrant population. I think now they serve a little bit broader segment than just the migrant student population. But bring students to campus, bring families to campus, support those students while they're here. They actually have a higher retention rate than our white students or majority students do from first to second year. They unfortunately don't have a higher graduation rate. But we decided with the Caminos al Futuro program in Jerome that what we needed to do was go back farther. We needed to go actually to, you could argue whether we should have gone to 6th grade. We decided to go to 8th grade and sort of really start making a pathway. I actually like to say that a lot of students drop out of college in 6th grade because when you look at their academic performance, for example, on math, and you look at their aspirations, they start to change. And in 6th grade, at least our College of Education is able to detect less difference in general between the group of students who are doing well in school. They all want to go to college. They all think they're doing well in math, etc. Then in about 6th grade, you start to see some stratification, and you start to see that there are people who are falling off that track and accepting that they're falling off that track. And in Idaho, that's a pretty big group of people. We only have 46% of our population that goes on to post-secondary education.
Wow. And have you started to see the students that you engaged first at 8th grade enroll now?
So not yet, just because of a timing issue.
Right.
Those students are now, they've completed 8th grade and they're just about to complete freshman year.
Got it.
But what we have seen is that all 40 of the students who were initially engaged in 8th grade are still engaged today. And the parents are quite engaged. Now all of those students are involved in our 4-H program. Essentially, almost none of those students from that high school were coming up here during the summer for the 4-H program that we run. It's a program called STACK, which I forget what that acronym actually stands for, but big program and a very white program.
Yeah.
And now that group of students came up last summer for STACK. They're looking forward to doing it again. I think it's really exciting. By the way, if you look at 4-H nationwide, it's, as you might expect, although 4-H has changed quite a bit. It used to be a very agricultural-oriented program, and it still has some of that orientation. It's embraced a wider range of possibilities, I would say. But not surprisingly, it's overrepresented in terms of rural students by a lot. It's overrepresented in the Midwest, where there's a strong farming ethos, I would say. But it's quite dramatically underrepresented relative to the population of Hispanic kids. And this is a change in that particular program. It's land-grant university, which is typically where the 4-H programs are centered. I think it's really important that we take advantage of that infrastructure to change the trajectory in some of those communities that we're already traditionally serving.
Just yesterday, there was a Wall Street Journal article that was pointing out, I think 10% of counties are depending on immigration for their growth.
Yeah.
And a large percent of those regions are rural regions.
We certainly do see that in Idaho. We need to learn how to serve those students educationally, professionally, et cetera. So I think the Caminos al Futuro program is a part of that, at least a model to sort of see what works. And we've had some, fascinating things. I've gone down and visited the kids there.
Tell me a good story. What do you hear when you visit those kids?
Well, so the one time I've gone down and visited those students was kind of fun. I went down there with the woman who's one of our graduates. She says she came to the University of Idaho from Jerome, almost by chance, a woman named Michelle Aragon. And I just really liked her when I met her at an alumni thing. And I said, well, that's great. And I said, we have this program in Jerome. I'd like you to come down with me and visit these students. And so we visited the students. And she gave a nice talk. And I would say sort of one of the bottom lines or mottos of her talk was, see it and you can be it. And that's part of what we're trying to achieve, that you can see other opportunities for yourself. And that higher education can be that pathway to the future. Well, we went down there. One of the fun things was we asked the students, well, what do you want to be? Well, unless Jerome has an incredibly successful soccer program, I don't think the roughly third of the kids who said they were going to be professional soccer players are going to be professional soccer players. But, two of the kids said they wanted to be astronomers. Now, again, unless Jerome is incredibly unusual, that would be a pretty high percentage of astronomers. But I think it's the NASA program that they were involved in that summer that actually opened their eyes to even the possibility that they could do that. I don't know that they'll be astronomers, but the fact that they were thinking about being astronomers, I think says that the program is having influence upon them.
I live in Washington, D.C. I grew up in Salinas, a bit of an agricultural community, but still.
Yeah, sure. I've been to Salinas.
The assumption is there's not a profession necessarily in agriculture, but what you're telling these kids is that by being a part of the infrastructure of 4-H, having a pathway to University of Idaho, it's more than...
Oh, that could be a pathway to anything. I mean, it could be a pathway to profession in agriculture, but it can be they could be an astronomer.
Right.
They could even be a pro soccer player, I suppose.
How's the soccer team here?
Well, our women's soccer team is excellent, we don't have a men's soccer team. But gosh, our ag business and ag economics kids are highly recruited and do great professionally, as do a lot of other professions. So, what exact profession they end up in, I don't know that that's so important, but they end up with aspirations and access. I think that is pretty important.
So you said something earlier about the camp program, about having a higher retention in the first 2 years, but it drops off.
First year,
sorry. What do you think is happening later on in their academic life?
I'm pretty sure I know what's happening, but I'm not completely positive. I think what's happening is as they move forward, almost all those students, of course, have to accumulate some debt, $7,000 first year. And they look at that and they go, that's okay. Yeah. And then you come back the next year and you got another $5,000 and maybe another $5,000. And then they go, that's more money than I'll ever be able to save and pay back. I better get a job. Worst economic decision they probably could make in their whole life because they won't enjoy the post-graduation wage premium that most college graduates enjoy. And instead, what they'll probably end up doing is trying to pay off a loan off a roughly minimum wage job.
Right.
Bad idea. But I think it's very, very hard for most, especially low-income families, which is what camp's serving, to really think that way. That a loan like that is an investment in the future, but you got to get to the future.
And do you think that the work that you're doing with the younger students, the 8th graders on up, you'll be able to hopefully nip that in the bud?
I hope so. Yeah. We haven't done a lot of financial counseling, I would say, of them yet, although we have done a little bit on that and how do you finance an education. And I think it's very important, perhaps especially with that population, to be sure you engage the parents as well, because I think if you're saying as this institution, oh, don't worry, you can take on $5,000. The average student, by the way, who graduates from the University of Idaho with loans has about $25,000 in loans. 1/3 of our students graduate without loans, but those who do, about $25,000. So if we're saying, well, $25,000 is just a good investment, don't worry about that, okay? But your parents, your aunts and uncles, your siblings are going, man, $25,000, you're never going to be able to pay that back.
Yeah.
I only make $25,000 a year. I can't save that much money. Then that's just a magnet that's drawing you in that direction. And I get it. I don't think it's the right direction, but I get why it's so powerful.
So the name of the podcast is Only in America.
Yeah.
Right? And the question that I ask all of my guests is to finish the sentence. Only in America, ...
Ooh, that's a tough one. So, Only in America, America has a number of unique features, I think. And I'm probably thinking of some trivial ones, but I think what has distinguished America for many, many years is that it really has been the land of opportunity. And if you ask people in other countries whether they'd like to come to America, meaning the United States, really, it's an overwhelmingly yes, they would like to do that. Gallup has some incredible data on how many people would, if given the opportunity, like to immigrate to the United States. And I think it's because it is still viewed as the land of opportunity. And I think, personally, I've had incredible opportunities here. My family was immigrant at one point, but, we've done very well. And I like to think other people can do well as well. That was a terrible sentence, but okay.
Thank you very, very much.
Chuck Staben is president of the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho. For more information on Chuck, visit our website, immigrationforum.org. And while you're there, take a minute to subscribe to Only in America. Only in America is produced by Regina Medina and Emily Chow. Our sound editor is Regina Medina. Kathleen Farrell is executive producer, and I'm Ali Nirani. Thank you so much for listening to Only in America, and I will talk to you next week.